As we talk about federal workers who have been summarily terminated, NBC 10 Philadelphia's Brian Sheehan is on with a guy named Robert McCabe, a former IRS employee. Check this out.
Tell me what happened today.
So, I went in at my normal time. When I arrived there, everybody was in a very downtrodden mood. And when I went to my computer, everybody was having some technical issues. Like none of our computers were really loading up either the programs that we needed to operate or like Teams. My story is the Teams. That's kind of how I figured out that we were getting fired today. Was when I went in, I logged into Teams and I sent you the photo of what I saw when I went to log in. And that's when I left my cubicle and I went around to everybody else I work with. And I'm like, hey, what's your Teams look like? Some were having trouble, some were able to log in. It was very, very chaotic. There was no organization to it at all. And basically we just sat around for the rest of the day. Talk about government efficiency. We literally sat there and did nothing all day long while we waited for our fate. So again, we got our email saying that we were fired after sitting around all day knowing we were fired. And then we turned in our equipment about an hour or so later, and then we were escorted out of the building.
What do you make of what happened to you and your colleagues today? We hear about 400 employees, including yourself, were laid off.
It's unfair. I was unemployed, so I was laid off. I was laid off before this job, and it took me 8 months to apply and go through all the background checks and everything I had to do to get this job. And then 4 months later, now I'm in the same boat I was in before. I don't know how to feel. I'm kind of numb right now. I went out to lunch with one of my buddies after immediately it happened, and what can you do at this point? Aside from reach out to the news organizations, reach out to our senators, reach out to our representatives. It was an illegal firing. My performance was good. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. I was even one of those government employees that went every day of the week. I had to report every Monday through Friday, 7 to 3:30. That was my tour duty, and that's what I served. And here I am.
Just to be clear, almost like 6,500, maybe 7,000 IRS agents were fired. Now, the reason why he was fired is because he's considered a probationary, and I don't know what probationary means in the terms of this. Like, it could be 6 months, the first 6 months on your job. Again, if you were promoted within an agency, you are also a probationary hire and you can get fired. The IRS, for every dollar spent at the IRS, $7 is returned. They will screw up IRS direct file. That's going to be a casualty, saving your average person a ton of money. They didn't have to file with TurboTax. They didn't have to file with the HR block. And it's going to screw up, without a doubt, people's tax returns. They're going to be more angry at the IRS. This is not about efficiency. If it was about efficiency, in terms of saving the U.S. dollars, you would add 6,000 IRS agents. And they would be dedicated to auditing people like Elon Musk, billionaires, millionaires who are avoiding taxation.
Right, because I mean, like the filing services, the private filing services now are tax deductible, so we're essentially paying them to like H&R Block to do taxes for people.
When we could be doing this for free.
Yep.
Super easy. Super easy. Super easy. I think with the IRS direct file, I don't think you can do it if you have any 1099 income. It's all W-2. You can do it if it's 1099 interest, but not non-employee compensation. Because Mila and I were going to try and do it. But there it is. And the guy was unemployed for 8 months. It's not easy to find a job.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm wrong. When I say it's not easy to find a job after you've been summarily fired, I guess I'm wrong. And who better to know than Sean Hannity, multi-millionaire. Here he is on his radio program trying to justify what's going on with people fired. Now, 30% of the workforce are vets. Personally, I don't think you as a federal worker should be treated any better or worse because you were a vet. But a lot of these people did go through absolute hell in certain situations. And certainly on the right, ostensibly, they care about the vets. Of course they don't. But here is Sean Hannity explaining to his audience why people got to suck it up. You know, I'm sure your landlord or your bank will allow for you to take a couple of weeks or months off of paying them because you're such a good guy. Remember now, these are people, a lot of these people just got promotions. So put yourself in the mindset of somebody who just got promoted. Oh, we've arrived. Honey, we can afford that we can afford those car payments now. We can afford to, we can afford to build that fence in the backyard or whatever it is. And because you were just promoted, you got fired. Or I'm in civil service. I know there's a cap on what I can make, but I know this is a secure job because I go in and I do my job well every day. I got a good review and government work. Again, I'm not going to become a millionaire, but I am doing good for people and I'm doing a good job, so my job's secure. Nope.
Eric is in Wisconsin. Hey, Eric, how are you? Glad you called.
Hey, Sean, thank you so much for all you're doing. We sure appreciate it here in Wisconsin, and we tried to help out this election cycle. So,
well, you helped out big time. You did. Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, all of you helped. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wish we could have got Tammy Baldwin out of there, but it didn't work out too well. So, but
yeah, well, you came close. I mean, unfortunately, you don't win every game you play.
Yeah, right. But hey, I just awesome stuff that Doge is doing with Elon Musk, and we sure appreciate it out here. Is we're kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about.
I'll tell you something.
Moron. God.
We'll get to this in a second. USAID, what the annual budget is. But farmers get a big piece of that, a significant piece of it. The taxpayers and farmers in Wisconsin, they're not going to see a single dime of savings, but they're going to see a lot more in terms of costs because the profit making by corporations who are now not going to have to worry about regulators is going to come at the expense of the consumers, of the citizenry. Continue.
Yeah, that out here is we're kind of farmers and taxpayers and all that good stuff. But one thing I'm concerned about, Sean, a little bit, and I'm concerned the liberal media might run with this, is one of our tenants just recently got laid off from the USDA, and he's a disabled vet, multiple deployments overseas, and yeah, the guy is without a job now, and I'm just afraid that stuff like this is going to get out there. And I know you got a soft spot for military and police.
Pause it for 1 second.
EMS
I love the fact that it's his tenant. I'm worried he's not going to be able to pay me for rent. I'm a little concerned that this guy, I'm not going to pay me for rent. I wonder if Sean's going to say, well, I know you're going to do your part and not charge him rent for however long it takes him to find a job.
Right. That's the thing about this so-called waste is so many of these things are providing good jobs, and
government doesn't provide jobs. Government doesn't provide jobs.
Well,
government doesn't create jobs. Isn't that what we were told?
I think that might be, we might want to look back.
Do we have to go all the way back to 8 years, 10 years for that? Go ahead.
All those guys, and just a little concerning that we don't let these guys, fall off the wagon here and get neglected because they've done so much for our country.
Look, I don't like to see anybody in a position where they're going to lose their job. In the case of USAID, and obviously your friend, I'm sure, was not a part of this, but there was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American.
First off, he doesn't address the USDA, which is what the worker was working at. So they just use USAID because it's the low-hanging fruit where everybody thinks that there are tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars of fraud and waste because it all is going out the door to foreign governments. The USAID budget is $40 billion annually. Of that, a minimum of $2.5 billion goes directly to U.S. farmers. Now, I don't know how much it costs to ship that food, but those are also American companies that are shipping that food. And those farmers have to be paid to grow that because otherwise they wouldn't be able to survive. This is not about the USDA loans that we've heard, farmers getting screwed over because of it. It's not about SNAP cuts that are coming in the Republican budget. When they complain about USAID, it's like, why would we spend $10 million on Sesame Street in Iraq? Haven't we done enough to those people there? Didn't we blow up their whole civil society? Why would we spend $1 to replace it? Why would we spend any money in Afghanistan? Well, who cares if Ebola is spreading like wildfire in certain parts of Africa? I mean, what could possibly hurt us here in the wake of a pandemic? Why do we care about providing support? We could just ultimately bomb them. Why would we even provide any aid? And then these people in the same breath will be like, but China's our #1 competitor and we must defeat them. What do you think China's doing? But all right, so he focuses on something that has nothing to do with this person, this vet, getting fired from USDA.
People and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that
Wait, go back. He didn't work for them. He worked for USDA, but he's going to hear USAID every time because that's just a better story. Go ahead.
Was, tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars just thrown down the drain and stolen from the American people and our children and grandchildren. It's just unfortunate he worked for them. With that said, there are going to be a lot of job openings. A lot of people, for example, retired and took the early retirement and payout. And then there's
Pause it for a second.
going.
They shifted the buyout to early retirement because there is an early retirement program. that you can take and that people by and by take with some regularity in the federal government. And now they said, like, you can't get your early retirement unless you sign the buyout thing to make it look like people are taking the buyout. Not that many people have. There's usually 150,000 people who turn over in the government annually. And so far, the number that I've seen floated is 60,000, but that includes the normal attrition, because you can't do the early retirement thing. Now, I'm sure people are getting nervous, but they're lying. They're having to lie about this. And if you're looking for encouragement and hope, the idea that they're having to lie about this is a good sign. Go ahead.
And took the early retirement and payout. And then there's going to be jobs hopefully created in the energy sector when we blow that out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities.
Pause it for a second. What does it mean to blow out the energy sector? We already know that we have been drilling and producing more oil than at any other time in the history of the country. What is the energy? More people going to work at gas stations? What exactly is going to happen? If you blow out the energy sector, was it more people are going to work on oil rigs? Is that what he's talking about? This disabled vet is going to go work on an oil rig? Is that what he's talking about? I mean, what happens when the energy sector, this is going to be offset, incidentally, by all the cuts to like solar and wind power and people who've been working in those industries. I mean, you understand that we're weeks away from looking at a number. Every federal worker you cut, every federal dollar you cut, every federal grant you cut causes in the private sector this many people to lose their jobs and this many people to lose money. If they're successful at what they want to do, aside from leaving Americans less safe, they are going to also leave them poorer. Now, hopefully, if they're lucky, they'll be able to say, oh, but we're going to give you a tax cut. And of course, most of that money is going to rich people. Go ahead.
That out, which I believe the president's going to do as quickly as possible, and other opportunities. We all have to think of the what if you lose your job. Everybody has to have that in the back of their head. My entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day.
Pause it for a second.
And
now, if Hannity had been fired 15, 20 years ago, he could live off his millions and millions of dollars he already made.
That's so efficient.
And here's a taste of Republican leadership. Always have anxiety about your job. Always. Always. That's the way we should live. Anxiety. Are we going to be able to pay for our kids? That's why healthcare, bad idea. Cuts down on worker anxiety. This is him being sympathetic now. Remember, we don't want the liberal media to make something out of this vet. Go ahead.
In the back of their head, my entire career, I assumed I'd be fired any day. And with but smart, innovative, hardworking people will always be in demand, always. And it sounds like I'm describing your friend. And I would just urge that person, do not get discouraged. And I don't know if he's getting the buyout.
Sean, why don't you hire him?
Well, I mean, I'm sure he's smart and innovative in this and that. Like, multiple tours, disabled vet. I mean, this is a guy who wants to get out there and be an entrepreneur, I bet.
He just accidentally got hired by the government.
Yep.
Or not getting the buyout, I'm not sure. If he is, that would mean he has until October 1. He will get paid until then. That gives him time, and that gives him time, to find a job that he's going to, thrive in and be successful at and be happy and secure again. And however, to continue to spend tens of billions of dollars on wokeism, transgenderism, DEI, and the Green New Deal abroad as the country veers off into bankruptcy is not an alternative. It's not an option for us. And you can't do this to the American taxpayer either. And he's just caught up in that, unfortunately for him. There are good people that are going to be, hurt because the people that have done this to the country have put them in vulnerable positions. It's really not Donald Trump that put them in the vulnerable position. It's the people that wasted all this money that put them in the vulnerable position, in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough to see, and especially for veterans that have done so much. We got.
You know what? But there will be other opportunities that are now going to emerge in a new economy, and make sure that he makes available to him that I would have go and get that government payout till October 1. That buys him time. And you know what I say to people that are out of work all the time? I say,
I mean, obviously, he's just desperately hoping that this guy took the buyout. And of course, there is no budget line item for the budget for the buyout. Incidentally, that's a fictional buyout at this point. There is no money available for a buyout. It doesn't exist. It's in no budget. But they have to lie. They have to lie because they realize how bad this sounds. Yep. The guy calls in, I'm afraid the liberal media is going to talk about this. I'm afraid this liberal media is going to talk about this real person who's going through this real thing.
How we're purging veterans from the civil service.
And, he's my tenant, which means that I could be out some money. Right. So this is really serious.
That's so perfect that he's a landlord.
Yep.
I do like how Hannity both accidentally reframed him, the USDA employee, as a USAID worker, and also reframed this guy as this guy's friend, not his tenant.
Yep.
But hey, a new economy coming, folks.
Hey, the new energy blowout, whatever that means. New economy.
Folks, if we have time, call into Hannity and tell us about your call if you make it on.
Exactly. Here is Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends this morning. And they're all running cover now for this because there are people at town halls going like, hey, man, what's going on here? Now, let's be clear. The people who are showing up, they voted for Trump. That IRS agent, he voted for Trump. That doesn't mean that they were necessarily MAGA. He said that, well, I thought this guy was a business guy and I thought he would come in and do things efficiently. This sort of mythology around Donald Trump. He's a business guy. He's going to do things efficiently. I didn't think he would just willy-nilly cut things. Well, here's the thing is that we are uneducated as a country as to what it means to be a billionaire. It means A, they don't pay taxes. Everything they do is structured to avoid paying taxes. His Trump Foundation is structured to avoid paying taxes. They don't care about the IRS. Inefficiency? Trump just ordered $200 million, I think it was, to DHS to make videos thanking him for stopping immigrants from coming into the country. That doesn't seem to be terribly efficient. But now when they see the implications of what happens when you cut willy-nilly, and we haven't even seen the implications of it. We're just seeing the first round of the direct implications on workers. We haven't even seen the knock-on effects. And hopefully, Democratic politicians and others will draw the connection between you fire someone at the USDA and SNAP benefits are late. You fire somebody at the USDA and, hey, wait a second. why are we having problems with our food supply? You fire someone at the USDA and maybe like, how did this bird flu get so out of hand? But in the meantime, what they're doing is they're just bailing water, and they're having to lie. And like I say, that's a good sign. They've run out of actual, like, there's no ideology here. MAGA just loves Donald Trump. There are people who voted for Donald Trump because they thought they were getting something slightly different, an efficient businessman, or getting rid of all the wokeism. And people wake up and they're like, is the wokeism gone yet? It is? How come it's raining? Like, isn't this supposed to affect the weather?
And almost every agency wants them to come in. So go ahead and gut Treasury. Because you know what helps? Because cabinet secretary's got certain responsibilities, and the president's got to get elected, and people. But when you have someone from the outside come in and make some tough cuts, you could say, I don't have my hands in that. The blowback they're getting in some of these town halls is real. I'm sure there's some people in there that voted for Trump and said, I walked into work and I lost my job. But that's going to be one of the casualties of having to take a $2.7 million federal workforce and knock it down to maybe half of that. So I think we got a heads up on it. I think the president would do himself a favor, and the Treasury Secretary especially, just saying, hey, we have a $7 trillion budget. We only make $5.9 trillion. The revenue gap is $2 trillion. This is part of closing that gap, is lessening the responsibility. It's not punitive.
Okay, first off, he starts off by saying, well, at least we can bring in Musk and pretend like it's his fault. We can bring in a consultant. And this, again, also, Democrats should be out there, get rid of the word MAGA. There's no MAGA Republicans. There's Republicans. Donald Trump is a Republican president. Musk is working for a Republican administration. This is what Republicans do. This is 15 years ago. I sat on a stage. I got invited to that Aspen Idea Festival or something once in my life with Janine. And it was some game show or talk show that we were supposed to do that's sort of supposed to be somewhat fun. And so they had us interview Grover Norquist, and it was supposed to be fun. And Grover Norquist was the head of an organization. I don't even know if it exists anymore. Taxpayers for America, fairness, bullshit, whatever it was. And they were the prototype Tea Party. It was Americans for Tax Reform, and they ran Toomey, I think it was, in Philadelphia, who we now think of as like, oh, he's an old-style Republican. No, he was a lunatic. And I remember interviewing, and maybe this was in like 2010, because I feel like I talked about it on this show. We're talking to Grover Norquist, and we're trying to keep it light because it's supposed to be fun. And he immediately launches in about federal workers and all the benefits they get and how unfair that is for other workers. And I was like, well, maybe we should give those to other workers. And their project to demonize federal workers was in full swing 15 years ago, and probably before then. The idea, I mean, you go back to, what was it, 2008, where, they're talking about, maybe before this, cutting the Department of Education, getting rid of government agencies, getting rid of the IRS, cutting federal workers. Clinton capitulated to it by setting up a committee, and it took, of course, they studied it for 8 months and ended up cutting, a small percentage of the workforce. But they studied it at least. But it was garbage then too. Our federal workforce, relative to our population, has been static for 40 years. If they're concerned about the deficit or the debt, then why are they going to promote a $4.5 trillion tax cut? Why would you cut revenue if you're concerned about this? Because they're not. They're not concerned about the
And
deficit.
all the people they represent
They're not concerned about the debt.
have so much money. Like it's so absurd.
They don't care about those things. They don't. They're going to try and vote on a bill tomorrow, I think, that's going to cut like $800 billion of Medicaid, among other things. And Trump gives away the game. Well, we're not going to touch Medicaid, except for all the illegal immigrants that are taking Medicaid and all the DEI and wokeness and transgender stuff. And that's going to be $800 billion. You're an idiot. Well, you also may just be ignorant. But it really is, there's two classes of people who believe Donald Trump when he says, three classes of people when he says, we're not going to touch Medicaid. One is somebody who just doesn't follow these things. Two is someone who hasn't gone back to the last time he was president in his attempts to cut things then. And three, one who's just being willfully ignorant or lying. Maybe that's four. They don't care about the deficit or the debt. Because for every one of these agencies that gets cut, dollar for dollar, it probably puts, it is a transfer of wealth from U.S. citizens into the pockets of shareholders of corporations. They don't care about USAID. They care about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They don't care about the IRS. The rest of them, they actually just genuinely care about. But that's why you bring up any agency, they're going to talk about USAID. They're just getting rid of the wokeness. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.